Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking this evening. Profit booking on the Lal Street. The Nifty drops 1% from its high point of the day. Bank stocks buck the trend with the Nifty Bank Index closing at a record high. The rupee gains against the dollar hitting its highest level in 5 weeks. Cryptocurrencies see a rapid sell-off. Bitcoin briefly drops to its lowest level in 2022. Investor sentiment takes a beating after the world's largest crypto exchange, Binance, steps in to bail out the second largest exchange, FTX, due to a liquidity crunch. Tata Motors reports a 944 crore rupee loss in Q2, even as revenue rises 30% year-on-year. Margins also miss estimates. No red wave in the U.S. midterm elections as Democrats perform better than expectations. The race to control the Senate and the House remains too close to call. This is a setback for former President Donald Trump, who was the face of the Republican campaign. CNBC-TV18's Newsbreak is confirmed. The union government releases a framework for its sovereign green bond, provides for flexibility for unutilized funds to be rolled over for 2 consecutive years. Proceeds raised from the sale of bonds would be used to eligible green projects that fall under renewable energy, clean transportation, among others. The government will release a reworked draft data protection bill for feedback after withdrawing it from Parliament in August. The draft bill is likely to keep social media companies outside the regulatory ambit after concerns of overlapping regulations. Data localization norms may be relaxed as well. That's a big CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Another tech giant is pruning its workforce. Facebook's parent company Meta will begin layoffs today. Mark Zuckerberg takes the onus, says its over-optimism led to overstaffing. Elon Musk discloses yet another share sale in Tesla worth $4 billion. Musk has sold Tesla shares worth $20 billion since April, when he first made an investment in Twitter. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud takes oath as India's 50th Chief Justice. President Draupadi Murmu administers the oath of office. Justice Chandrachud promises to make it a no-stress court for everyone. Well, we're almost at the end of earnings season, but results still coming in. Tata Motors has reported a net loss of 944 crore rupees for Q2. Margins also missing expectations. Sonia standing by with the Tata Motors report card. Sum up Q2 for us, Sonia.
Well, you know, these numbers are definitely lower than what the street was estimating, Shireen. So if you look at it, it's a net loss of 950 crores. The poll was 248 crores. You generally can't go by what the poll suggests because, you know, there's a big forex elements that Tata Motors has in its business. So the net number always varies. But even if you look at the core EBITDA performance, right, it is below what the street was estimating. The EBITDA has come in at 5,572 crores. The poll was 8,330 crores, and the expectation this time around was that things will definitely improve both for JLR and the domestic business, purely because of a low base as well as an improvement in the semiconductor supply issue. On that account, the margins at 7% are lower than the poll of 10.2%. Although on a year-on-year basis, there is a little bit of an improvement that we've seen. Now, I was just going through the press release for, JLR, and the JLR business, the core numbers are not too bad if you compare it year-on-year. The revenues have come in at 5.3 billion pounds, which is a growth of 36% year-on-year. And there's a strong model mix and pricing with the wholesale volumes going up 17.6%. The problem really is that the JLR business continues to be loss-making, and that's because of the forex element as well that I was referring to earlier. Even in the passenger vehicle business, it's a good growth that we've seen, 71% growth that we've seen on the top line because of an improvement in the wholesale volumes because of the success of the new Tata Nexon. The electric vehicle volumes have done very well, but on the bottom line as well, the numbers are slightly below what the street was estimating. So let me toss this question across to Ashwin Patil, who's joining in. Before that, the commentary from the management is quite positive. They do say that the demand continues to remain strong. However, a key monitorable in the wake of global uncertainties is if the improving chip supply and the cooling commodity prices, that will definitely aid revenues and margin recovery. And hence, they aim to deliver strong improvements in EBIT and free cash flows in the second half of the year. So the commentary is strong, but yes, the core operational performance is below street estimates. We have Ashwin Patil joining in. Ashwin, what did you make of the initial numbers and what do you see as the movement of the stock here on?
Well, I think that the Q2 numbers were definitely below our expectations, but they were mainly plagued by the currency losses that the company has faced in this quarter because of severe depreciation of the rupee as compared to dollar as well as the GBP, and though the volumes have been good, but they couldn't percolate into the profitability. First of all, because of the currency, as I said earlier, as well as the input cost impact has not been felt up to that extent what it should have been felt. So the impact of that, most of the auto OEMs are reporting margins which are not really very satisfying in Q2 where they should have been there. But now going forward in Q3, the impact of that should be felt very well. And also the chip shortage issue is also getting resolved up to a good extent, as most of the auto OEMs have cited. And also the volume performance has been good. JLR improvement is there on the volume front, as well as in the domestic markets. We are seeing a good traction in the commercial vehicles as well as the passenger vehicle business. So going forward, I think there is a lot of positivity in the stock. I should definitely agree with that. And maybe with the results have not been really very well, in line with expectations. So some sort of reaction will be seen tomorrow in the stock. But going forward, I think on a long-term basis, on a one-year time horizon, I think that the stock can be bought at these levels.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ashwin, for that. So just to summarize, Shireen, the numbers are below street estimates. As Ashwin was also pointing out, it's the forex element that once again has hit the numbers. Consolidated net loss, JLR has posted a net loss, but the management commentary is positive. Also, just a word on the stock, while the entire auto sector has performed in the last 12 months, Tata Motors has been languishing. A year back, it was 500 rupees. The stock right now is 433 rupees. Perhaps pricing in this delayed recovery that JLR is seeing because of the forex issues as well as problems in pockets like China. So there may not be too much of a downside tomorrow, purely because, a lot of it maybe is in the price, and commentary from the management is good. But yes, these numbers are definitely below what the street was estimating. Back to you.
Sonia, many thanks for joining us. That's a quick snapshot of Tata Motors' Q2 performance, as Sonia was pointing out, hit by the forex element under what the street was expecting. Now to the stock market action. Profit booking being seen on the Lal Street today. The Sensex and the Nifty dropped about 1% from the high point of the day. But in the end, the Sensex lost over 150 points. Nifty dropped nearly 50 points. Bank stocks continue to buck the trend. The Nifty Bank Index ending at a record closing high. That's the Nifty Bank for you. In the money market, the Indian rupee ended at a 5-week high against the dollar. This on the back of higher FPI inflows as well as global dollar weakness. One US dollar now costs over 81 rupees. Lata joins us now with the day's highlights. Lata, strong close for the rupee today.
The rupee closed strong, and that was in concert with most Asian currencies. This is really a story of dollar weakness. The theory in the global markets, financial markets, appears to be that for the moment, all the bad news of the Fed tightening is in the price, and now it's time for to take on risk and bring down your holding in dollar, which is actually a risk aversion asset. It is a safe haven asset. That's not the mood of the market at this point in time. The market is smelling a Santa Claus rally. Of course, all this can change if the US CPI numbers are terrible, or if come December 14th, 15th, the Fed sounds more hawkish than what the market is expecting. But at the moment, the entire grammar is of adding risk, and that's why the safe haven dollar is seeing weakness. The rupee was the second best performing currency in Asia. The Korean won also was pretty strong, but all Asian currencies were strong. For India, the other positives, as you said, were that FPI flows into Indian equity markets has been strong. As well, crude prices have fallen to about $95, and India is one of the biggest importers, so that's again very, very positive. Expectation is that things always swing the other way. So 81.20 is seen as a good support for the dollar. And there are people in the market who believe that 80-something will also be seen.
All right, Lata, many thanks for joining us. The rupee strengthening today, but as Lata was pointing out, more on account of the dollar weakening globally. The top international story, counting in the U.S. midterm elections, is currently underway, and the Democrats have surpassed expectations. The race for the House and the Senate remains too close to call. Many polls had pointed to a red waves, with Republicans sweeping the midterm, but that has not materialized. However, Republicans could be taking control of the House of Representatives. The Democrats could keep control of the Senate by a wafer-thin margin. Let's start with a big result from Pennsylvania. Democrat John Fetterman defeated Republican Mehmet Oz to flip the Senate seat. This is a big win for Democrats, which bolsters their chance of controlling the Senate. Democrats in California, Hawaii, Illinois and Vermont are expected to win their Senate seats by a large margin. However, Washington and Colorado remain too close to call. Critical states like Georgia, Arizona and Nevada are also too close to call, but several polls suggest that Democrats are leading the race, but only marginally. All is not lost for the Republicans, who can wrest control of the House of Representatives. This will deal a blow to President Biden's legislative agenda, but the Democrats can offset some of the damage by maintaining control of the Senate. This year, the midterms have also thrown up some key milestones. Maryland has elected its first black governor, with Democratic candidate Wes Moore winning the elections. Massachusetts has elected its first openly lesbian governor. Democrat Maura Healey made history by winning that race. Bree Jackson reports on the midterms and the significance for former President Donald Trump.
Some of the Trump-backed candidates that former President Trump thought or was pushing for, they did not win. In particular, when you talk about that race there, that Senate race in Pennsylvania, where former President Trump had backed Dr. Oz, but John Fetterman, the Democrat, did win that race. And President Biden was watching these results as they rolled in, and top advisors say he was in an upbeat mood. But overall, even though we don't know exactly what will happen, top Democrats say that it was an unexpectedly good night, in particular when it comes to that race there in Pennsylvania, which was a key seat. Fetterman is now going to replace retiring GOP Senator Pat Toomey. Some of the other big races that we did see where Republicans did pick up a win, or at least maintain a seat there in the Senate, where J.D. Vance was able to win in Ohio. But Democrats did stave off that red wave that many people had predicted, outperforming during the election cycle, where historically the party in favor does not typically do well. So with the votes still being counted, the Republicans do believe that they will secure enough seats to take over the House. But the Senate still remains in the balance, in particular when you think about that race in Georgia, which has been too close to call.
Bree, thanks very much reporting there on the U.S. midterm election. And you can catch full coverage of the U.S. midterm elections live from Washington and Wall Street at 7 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Get the CNBC advantage. Now, the layoffs across the tech industry continue. Social media giant Meta has begun its biggest layoff for the year. This after the company CEO Mark Zuckerberg confirmed that some employees will be laid off today. He's also taken the blame for the layoff, saying his over-optimism led to overstaffing. Shares of Tesla under pressure, with Elon Musk offloading his stake in the company just days after acquiring Twitter. Elon Musk has sold Tesla shares worth nearly $4 billion, but he started the dilution much earlier. Musk has also sold Tesla shares worth nearly $20 billion since he disclosed his stake in Twitter in April. The latest sale comes after Musk's August statement, where he had said he won't sell any more Tesla shares. On to the big CNBC-TV18 exclusive today. The government will release a reworked draft data protection bill for feedback. This after withdrawing it from Parliament in August. The draft bill is likely to keep social media companies outside the regulatory ambit because there were concerns about overlapping. Ashmit joins us now with more. Ashmit, what are the likely changes we could see, and is it going to meet its date with the winter session of Parliament?
Well, it's been a long time coming. You pointed out 2017 is when we had the Puttaswamy judgment, which upheld the right to privacy. Since then, we've seen back and forth, with the latest being that the centre had withdrawn the bill from the Parliament on account of what they had called were excessive amendments, and a complicated regime is what the centre had called it, and had withdrawn it. What we understand is that they've paid heed to some of the advice that they received from some of the intermediaries, some of the stakeholders. So as far as what the deadline looks like, well, at least it will be open up for public consultation by the end end of November or by early December. That's the indication that sources within the government are telling us. As to what the changes could look like, well, the broader theme that the government is trying to convey is that, look, we're looking for a simple regime. We're looking for ease in compliance. We're looking for a regime that is not averse to startups, that is supportive of startups. As to what exactly those changes are, well, there are a couple of takeaways here important to keep in mind. There was a lot of feedback received on account of data localization, storage and processing norms. These are conditions which one understands that are likely to be relaxed. That's what sources within the government are telling us. That's one. The other important takeaway is social media companies, intermediaries. The earlier regime, the bill that was before the parliament had sought for overriding powers being given to the Data Protection Authority that it would exercise over these intermediaries. What we understand is that these social media companies, given that they're already regulated under the IT Act, are likely to be taken out of the regulatory ambit of the Data Protection Bill. So that's the second key takeaway. The third is this bill was found to be excessive. Data Protection Bill was found to be excessive as it went even as far as to specify conditions for hardware and for devices. That is again something that in fact received a lot of lashback from the stakeholders, from the industry, and that is something that the government sources tell us is something that the bill will be aware of, will be wary of, and will keep these devices and regulating them out of the ambit of the data protection bills. But clearly all eyes now on the government, on MeitY for releasing it for public consultation, and that's when we can begin to get more clarity on the timeline going forward.
Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. Well, the big story that is breaking at this point in time, there is a setback for Nirav Modi. A UK court has rejected his appeal against extradition to India. Our colleague Sanjay Suri has been tracking that, and he joins us now with more. Let's take a look.
Modi's lawyer. And in fact, if you remember, in the court also there were at least, the two psychiatric experts came over and they gave a statement that, there is depression and there are suicidal thoughts also that are coming into his mind. But ultimately, it seems that the court understood that this is minor depression. There could be some sort of suicidal thoughts as well. But ultimately, since his appeal is, he is lost, the only option that is left is that he can file an application in the Supreme Court there, and then that is also going to be very tough because usually the Supreme Court does not entertain applications like this.
Yeah.
But here, after the Westminster Court gave an approval of his extradition, he's losing the battle in the High Court as well. So it seems to be that bringing him to India is not very far off. But at the same time, we all know that, in the case of Vijay Mallya as well, he lost. His application was not entertained in the Supreme Court. He lost in High Court as well. And ultimately, what has happened, there is no official word whether he's on asylum in United Kingdom, on what basis he's staying. So we don't know. So obviously, it's a big victory for the Indian organizations, especially agencies like CBI and ED. But ultimately, if we are not able to get somebody physically back into India, then the victory actually does not matter too much.
Yeah.
So here, let's see if, though he's lost his appeal, whether Indian agencies are able to get him physically from the United Kingdom or not. That is going to be something really interesting to see in days to come.
Sanjay, you spoke about the parallel process of asylum, which is an opaque process, and we don't get to know what exactly is happening, what are the bases, because it's a quasi-political process and also an executive process where the establishment of the day has the final call on these matters. But talking from the point of view of judiciary and the courts, this is the High Court after the Westminster Court. What are the legal options in judiciary that lie for Nirav Modi at this point in time?
Well, in the first instance, as Ashish was pointing out, he will certainly seek to approach the Supreme Court, but that is not a very promising path for him at all. For that, the first step would have to be for the appeals court here to give him permission to appeal. That permission in a case like this is usually denied because the Supreme Court here, unlike the Supreme Court in India, only takes up issues of cases that relate to public policy. This does not appear to be the case here. Then he has the option of applying to the European Court of Human Rights. That certainly is also a process that could gain him some time. Then eventually the case goes back to the Home Secretary, and there would be a further case for him to apply to the Home Secretary, which is to the British government really, that his mental health is not good, that he has health issues, and on those grounds also he will seek to try and block the extradition. And that also we have to consider. All these steps will be considered and could be potentially effective for him if he were to have failed on the parallel track of asylum. If that appeal has been rejected, and the asylum track again is where the Home Office takes a decision, but he can appeal, and that is an appeal process held in camera. If he has lost that case, and then if he loses all these steps in the extradition process, only then can he be physically extradited to India.
All right. Thank you, Sanjay, for getting us all those details. My colleague Ashish Mahershi also tracking that big story. It's a huge order from the UK High Court after the Westminster Court giving a go-ahead for the extradition process. We pointed out the complications that...
Well, that was our colleague Sanjay Suri reporting there. We will get him back to join us to give us a sense of where this leaves the actual extradition. Remember, Vijay Mallya also lost all of his appeals in the UK courts, but has not been extradited. In fact, we don't know what is the status of the extradition proceedings. All we have been told as there is confidential conversation, confidential dialogue or proceedings that have been underway between the UK government and Vijay Mallya, and there is nothing more for us to be able to elaborate as far as those confidential proceedings are concerned. The question now is whether Nirav Modi has any appeals left, and at this point in time, yes, he can appeal to the Supreme Court, but as Sanjay Suri was pointing out, that seems like a difficult proposition for Nirav Modi, but whether his extradition is guaranteed and his extradition is likely to happen shortly, we don't know, and those are questions that remain unanswered at this point in time. But remember, this goes back several years now. Nirav Modi has, of course, been in London. He was absconding, eventually found there in London, and has been going through the extradition appeals process. Sanjay Suri back with us. Sanjay, many thanks for joining us again. I just want to understand from you where this actually leaves the physical extradition of Nirav Modi. As we've seen in the case of Vijay Mallya, he went through the appeals process. At every stage in every court, the appeal was dismissed. Yet he has not been physically extradited to India. There are confidential proceedings on. We don't know what those proceedings are about. But can we draw parallels between where Nirav Modi finds himself and what can happen next?
Well, you're quite right. Winning an extradition case is not the same thing as winning an extradition. So far as the extradition case goes, the appeals court here has dismissed Nirav Modi's appeal, and he had been allowed to appeal on the sole ground that his mental health would not permit physical extradition. That appeal has been dismissed. His next step would be to seek permission from this court to appeal to the Supreme Court. That kind of permission is usually denied because the Supreme Court only takes up issues of public policy. And if that appeal to the Supreme Court or leave to appeal is rejected, he would have the option of going to the European Court of Human Rights. And that can win him some time. Again, it is not likely that he will succeed. Were that process to fail, this then goes back to the Home Office for it to sign off the order for physical extradition. But the real danger is the parallel process. He has applied for political asylum, and if that has also been dismissed, and we don't know if it has been because that is a confidential and a quite opaque process. If that appeal has been dismissed, then only is the way cleared for him to be physically extradited.
Right. So again, we don't know or don't have answers to where things currently stand as far as his appeal seeking political asylum in the UK. But Sanjay, any timeline? As you said, typically the Supreme Court would not entertain an appeal like this. But can we draw out a rough timeline of what Nirav Modi may be able to bargain for if he were to, for instance, appeal to the Human Rights Court?
Well, bearing in mind constantly that if this whole process is not tripped up in the asylum case, then we could be talking of weeks only. before he can actually be extradited to India, because we can take it for that the Supreme Court is not going to take up this case. Then if he goes to the European Court of Human Rights, that is a process again for that European Court to consider whether to admit or not. It is likely not to. And if it refuses, then it comes back to the Home Office, and then we could potentially have Nirav Modi back over in India over the next few weeks. Then we are not on a long way from physical extradition unless the asylum issue trips this up.
Sanjay, just hang in there. We've got other reactions as well. Karnal Singh, the former Enforcement Directorate Chief, joins us. Mr. Singh, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Our colleague there reporting from London, the court dismissing the appeal filed by Nirav Modi. But as Sanjay was pointing out, winning an extradition case is not the same necessarily as guaranteeing actual extradition. What is it that you would look out for from this point in time in this process, which has been on for a long time?
See, the extradition, we all know, is a difficult and long-drawn process. But with every step, the Indian investigating agencies, they are winning in UK, or Indian government is getting closer to him. Like he has lost this particular case. He may go in and appeal, that is the possibilities. But certainly we are getting closer to him and getting him back to India.
Yes, getting closer to him, and perhaps this will eventually lead to him being brought back to India. Also with us, Shantanu Sen, the former Joint Director of the CBI. Mr. Sen, appreciate you joining us. The court rejecting the appeal filed by Nirav Modi. How confident do you feel about his actual extradition?
I don't think Nirav Modi has any chance in the human rights area. There is no human rights involved in this. It's a pure and simple case of defalcation and crime. And as we have already had him extradited, his success has been limited, very, very limited. In fact, there has been no success. He has delayed the process, and extradition takes anything from 7 to 10 years to get through. And we are reaching the end of our legal process, and he is reaching the end of that. He will be back in India and face the trial.
You're saying he will be back in India and face the trial. The only concern that our colleague Sanjay Suri was raising there was the political asylum appeal that's also underway parallelly, except that they're confidential proceedings, so we don't know whether that stands dismissed or whether that is still open at this point in time as an option for Modi. Do you believe, given what we've seen happen with Malia, that that could still be the silver lining or the only hope left for Nirav Modi?
Well, human rights is out of the question. As far as political asylum is concerned, that's a purely political decision. And as an investigating officer, I really would have no opinion on that area. It's a question of his business interests overweighing our criminal interest. And as we know in UK, people can buy their way in, if they invest heavily and get asylum, as Lalit Modi has got. And that is a possibility. I do not rule out. But then where is the question of any political reasons, valid reason? It can only be a commercial decision by the United Kingdom.
Yes, and that continues to be a question mark. As Sanjay was pointing out, these are confidential proceedings and we do not have any further information. I'm going to get Sanjay back in. Sanjay, you heard what Karnal Singh, the former head of the ED, and Shantanu Sen, the former joint director of the CBI, had to say. They believe that the legal proceedings and the process that Nirav Modi was banking on or hoping for to turn things in his favor, that time has now run out, and it's only a matter of time before he finds himself himself in India. Given the regime change that we've seen in the UK, given the sensitivity of this matter, given the fact that this was a man absconding on the run after having defrauded public sector banks in India, the case for political asylum tenuous, Sanjay?
Well, the regime change in Britain has no role in this one way or another. That is a process that would have been for the government to consider earlier, and the government certainly would have rejected his claim for political asylum. That is certain, so far as that decision with the Home Office is concerned. The process is that he would apply to the Home Office, they would consider the case, give a ruling. It's almost certain they would have rejected the claim. He then would have a recourse to an appeal again to the Home Office itself. It is almost certain again that they would have rejected that too. Following that, he can go to the court in further appeal, and then there are two stages in court where an appeal can be heard, the first stage and at the second stage. And that is where human rights do come in, because he would claim that he would face political persecution and a violation of his fundamental human rights, which include medical rights, if he were to be physically extradited. And so through the political asylum case, the human rights arguments he would make would be prime. That is where we are in unknown territory. We do not know where his argument rests in that appeals process. But it is possible, and sadly we can do very little more than speculate. It's possible that if that asylum claim of his has been dismissed even by the courts, it would have been done without coming into public knowledge, then extradition is the only course left. If that is it, then certainly there is good reason for optimism that Nirav Modi would be back in India within weeks.
Well, as Sanjay was pointing out, you know, it is speculative at this point in time because we just don't know what has happened as far as the political asylum process is concerned. What we do have clarity on is the way that the court has ruled today, and it is a setback for Nirav Modi. Karnal Singh, Shantanu Sen and Sanjay Suri, thanks very much for joining us here on this breaking story to take us through the implications of the court's order and where this leaves Nirav Modi's extradition. That's it then on this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned. The news continues on CNBC-TV18.